Today is what to watch out for: a deep fake debate. The Supreme Court gives us a ruling straight out of SPARS, and another Bolivian coup won't be the last. The Monica Perez show starts now. So tonight is the presidential debate. It just makes me laugh because I think the entire value of it is in watching it to see what wacky stuff you see. And there's already been a lot of rumors about deep fake. I think I heard on Fox headline news that some of these Biden videos of him freezing or whatever are deep fakes. So I realized that there's going to be a lot of rumors of that. It's going to be put on by CNN directly with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. I mean, need I say more? And it's not going to include the whatever it is, the Institution for Presidential Debates, which is nonpartisan, whatever. And it's not going to have an audience. So all of that allows for an opportunity to do some really fishy stuff. I mean, nobody could be more inside than Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. I have a huge grudge against Dana Bash because she was super mean to Ron Paul. Brett Baird also very mean, jerks. Anyway, so those guys are so they're insiders. So you could do anything in front of them and they're going to go along with it. And I actually think that the fact that it's completely set up so that it could be a total fake inside job, whatever, that may be what people end up commenting on and noticing later on. They might actually go that those are essential elements to be able to roll out the conspiranoia psyop that I think is going to happen after this. So it may be interesting to watch. I don't know. Definitely stay tuned for today's clip. It's kind of like a trailer, like my foreshadowing the trailer of the debate tonight. That'll be very worth waiting for. So, but the first real story is the Supreme Court ruling today that I think was straight out of the SPARS document. And if you don't know what the SPARS document is, it's a 2017 scenario futurism acting play that they have on the Johns Hopkins website. And years ago, at least 3 years ago, I was on Tinfoil Hats talking about what was the nature of this document. And what it was like the media approach. It was like a scenario analysis by people who understood communications, how they were going to communicate through a pandemic, just like Event 201. It was this pandemic, and it was in 2017. And now that the appendices are unfolding, like what happens in the aftermath, that's literally one of the chapters. Sam and I got back together on Tinfoil Hats, which I think released yesterday. A lot of love on Twitter for that. Thank you very much. It was super fun. I love Sam. I think he's really, really real. And I very much enjoy talking to him. So I recommend that. But it was funny because I had just reread the whole document in order to chit chat with him. And so when I saw this SCOTUS case, I was like, oh my gosh, like the SCOTUS case from today. It's like it's straight out of SPARS. So let me tell you about that. First, I'm going to tell you what this banner says. There's a banner at the bottom of the screen that says that I broadcast on YouTube live for the comments. I'm not even broadcasting live on Facebook anymore because they took me down twice. And I'm just like giving you a redirect on there. If you come to YouTube to see this show and it's not live, I may have cut it off at 5 minutes and just redirect you to rockfin.com/Monica Perez or rumble.com/user/Monica Perez show. Of course, I'm also on your favorite podcasting platform, and this goes live on Twitter as well. But I just want to let you know, in case you're watching it and it disappears, that it's still basically everywhere else. So to the Supreme Court case, here's the headline. Supreme Court rejects GOP-led suits claiming government censored social media. Justices say plaintiffs don't have standing to allege that government officials engaged in censorship. That makes me crazy. Standing is hard to get. You can see it from a mile away. In law school, like you're just amazed time after time. Standing is an issue, and you want to square that away up front. But somehow these things sometimes plug along. I remember with the Georgia election cases, they strung everybody along for so long that other deadlines for filing expired, only to in the end rule no standing. And that was crazy to me. Actually saying it, I all of those videos got I got cascading strikes on YouTube for all of my election stuff, and so I probably shouldn't even mention it. I'm on definitely on a watch list for that. Anyway, so the story is that attorneys general of Missouri and Louisiana brought suit on behalf of some plaintiffs. The plaintiffs included a handful of doctors, an anti-vaccine activist, and a far-right web publisher to object to how the government influenced social media platforms during the pandemic to suppress certain information. Now, I can tell you, and I have never practiced this kind of law. I didn't even practice law after I'm a member of the bar, but I was never a practicing attorney with a license. I never did that. And just from what I remember from law school, that would fail on its face. And somehow it made it up through courts and appeals courts and everything else, because they are saying, the court says, you don't have specific damages. We don't make general rules. It has to be specific damages. And I look at that and I'm saying the social media platforms are the ones that have specific damages. They have standing and they were absolutely damaged. I mean, putting aside the fact that I consider them to be an extension of the government, which would, in that case, if they admitted that it was an extension of the government and not a private company that has a stated goal of being unbiased, and that is being an unbiased platform is the essence of the business. So if they're perceived to be unbiased or are in fact unbiased, that goes to the heart of their business and will cause them problems. I'm sure they can show damages to that. But I think they're actually a quasi-government entity, which would square this way right away, because then it would be a platform that requires free speech. So I would defend social media platforms that are truly private and not extensions of big tech or big defense, which is what they are. These big ones are. I would defend their right to absolutely censor whatever they wanted, but the government does not have that right. So they can't do it behind the scenes. They cannot do it if it's their platform, and they were. So, and the fact that a platform that being unbiased, the government did it because the government itself did not have enough influence. So wanted to deceive the public into thinking that this neutral platform had a certain consensus. And that was absolutely deceitful, fraudulent. The government has no right to do that kind of stuff. And what it did to the platforms is because it's biased and censored, that makes these social media platforms a one-sided political entity, and it bifurcates the customer base. It gives you only have liberals, and you can say they're all liberals at those places, and yes, maybe they are, but they claim that they're not. They are advertising that they are not. So this goes to their business, but it does not go to the business of the doctors in that. They don't actually, in my opinion, they don't have a right to free speech on a private platform. So the article goes on to say that by sidestepping the actual issue and just saying that it's a standing issue, they don't really set a precedent on whether or not the government can do this. Yet the newspaper, Wall Street Journal, points out it makes it more likely that the government will be able to engage in dialogue with big tech around content moderation. Like, this makes people think that it's okay, but there was no ruling about that. And the one who has had the goofiest stuff, in my opinion, was Amy Coney Barrett, whatever. She noted that online platforms had their own incentives to moderate content and enforce policies aimed at removing false and misleading content independent of their discussions with the government. None of the plaintiffs could show that any of their speech was restricted as a direct result of government pressure. That's why it has to be the social media companies themselves who bring this case, because if they were all going to do exactly what it was anyway, the government wouldn't even have approached them. But they did, because they wanted to curate it. And generally, like overall, there are many, I'm sure, examples. Obviously, that's not even in dispute. Many examples where the government did influence. The one that they gave several examples, but one was like Tucker Carlson had some video that we all loved, I think, if I recall correctly, and it was suppressed. And that's an example here. So that's why it's another thing when you see these like weird, like, wow, I can't believe Tucker Carlson did that video. It's like, well, it's a setup for something like this, in my opinion. So the decision was split. It was, let's see, Barrett, Roberts, and Kavanaugh joined her ruling, as did Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. So the three so-called conservatives and three liberals. And then there were three conservative dissenters, so-called, Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch. And they said the government's conduct was blatantly unconstitutional. And here's what Alito says. For months, high-ranking government officials placed unrelenting pressure on Facebook to suppress Americans' free speech. Because the court unjustifiably refuses to address the serious threat to the First Amendment, I respectfully dissent. But as I said, I don't think it's America's free speech that is at issue. It's a coercion and like a co-option of a business. It's fraud, like, and it's a taking. It's a taking, in my opinion, of the Facebook's value. Okay, it's the White House press secretary, Jean-Pierre, said the decision, this annoyed me, helps ensure the administration can continue our important work with technology companies to protect the safety and security of the American people after years of extreme and unfounded Republican attacks on public officials who engage in critical work to keep Americans safe by guarding them against information that is against the interests of big pharma. Is that really what their mission is? It's not. Even if they were even if they had good faith intention to, quote, keep Americans safe by curating information, they have no constitutional right to do that. That is not in the purview. If it would be under anybody's purview, it would not be under the executive branch. They execute. Just pisses me off. Anyway, okay, social media companies, which weren't parties to the case, have long rejected claims of liberal bias. They don't want that reputation. A trade group that advocates for them didn't take sides in the case, but in an amicus brief, which is like a friend writes a brief, it's not really part of the case. They urged, but you can use it if it makes good arguments. It urged the court to set clear boundaries for the government and decree that digital services can't be held liable for the actions of government officials. So they're kind of giving up. I mean, that seems to me like the big guys paving a path for government to censor them. And they're saying, well, we care about is like not being liable. But if they make this broad-based agreement with the government on how they should be censored, yeah, that's fine for Facebook and Google and, other NSA cutouts. But it's not okay if anybody wants to bubble up with some social media outlet that isn't controlled. Then they're going to have to deal with this stuff too. So the Biden administration, this one was hilarious. This was funny. The Biden administration told the court, wrap your mind around this one, told the court that government officials have their own free speech rights, and there was nothing untoward about using the bully pulpit of the presidency to push for industry reforms. These are not industry reforms, and if they had used the bully pulpit, there wouldn't be a problem. But they called them in back channel. They were like, "Hey, I see that post is still up there. What are you going to do about it? Huh? And we saw that text last week from Hunter Biden to the Chinese investors. My dad's standing right here, and he's saying, you do what we say or else. He'll bring the full weight of his power down on you. I mean, that's what's going on here, in my opinion. Yeah, it's called an abuse of power. It's not the bully pulpit influencing industry reform. That is just crazy making. This whole thing made me mad. So I also think that they're setting up for something else as a compromise that's actually going to make it worse, in my opinion. So here's the thing. The history of this case as it came down was a judge in Louisiana issued an injunction that broadly barred the government from communicating with social media companies about online content. That would have been great. But then a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said that was too broad, but officials, including the president's counsel, press secretary, director of digital strategy, and other White House staffers, could not coerce, significantly encourage, quote, or supervise content moderation. But SCOTUS threw it all out because they said they didn't have standing, that this case has no precedential value. But there is another case coming where the Supreme Court is going to rule on whether Florida and Texas have permission to regulate these platforms' content moderation practices. So I think there's a chance the Supreme Court will allow that, which looks like a conservative win. But all it really says is that the government can, in fact, influence how social media operates. And it would be, if it was, these artificial oligopolies and monopolies give rise to this kind of problem. But if the government hadn't picked winners and subsidized all of these platforms and, put their face jobs in there, there would be enough competition that you wouldn't need that. You could just go somewhere else. You could go to Gab, you could go to Truth Social, but you see what happens to those places. So the whole this and the fact that it's like a conservative liberal split decision just shows you how much it really matters. Okay. At the risk of belaboring this story, I have to read this segment from the SPARS document where they talk about this. This is chapter 16. This is the 2017 document. It says to reach. So what this document does, chapter by chapter, it says here are crises that we have to communicate with the public about. And one of the things was not enough vaccinated people. So in order to get more vaccine compliance, the government, this was 2017, before I think they started doing this widely, it said they did an aggressive advertising campaign which provided targeted internet advertisements to individuals as those individuals conducted web searches or visited anti-vaccination websites. If someone searched Google for Coravax side effects, for example, a sidebar appeared on the results page explaining the benefits of the vaccine. Likewise, if someone wished to view the video of someone vomiting from medical countermeasure, they would first have to watch a montage of pictures illustrating the effects of SPARS or a clip of a trusted official, which would be like Fauci, explaining Coravax's benefits. It says this advertisement campaign required government officials to leverage relationships in the information technology industry, including the many companies involved with social media. This impact was worth the effort. Vaccination rates began increasing among all but the most recalcitrant anti-vaccine activists. And then it asks the like roundtable question: why were partnerships between the federal government and the information technology industry, including a number of social media companies, so vital to increasing overall uptake of the Coravax vaccine? So it is a target for them of how critical it is to have a secret government social media pact to influence public behavior. It's outrageous, and it's all on behalf of Big Pharma in this SPARS document, which Johns Hopkins, in my opinion, is just it's like an industry. It might as well be an industry association for Big Pharma. So, okay, enough about that. I don't know why that one got me so mad. Because it was so disingenuous. It was so deceptive. I did not like that. All right. Now an article that caught my eye. I'll be surprised if anybody even noticed this one. It was a small article, but I found it interesting for a couple of reasons. Ex-Honduran president gets 45 years in prison in drug case. Judge calls Juan Orlando Hernandez a two-faced politician who helped narco traffickers ship cocaine to the U.S. Oh, I believe there are two faces. One that he shows to the narco traffickers and one that he shows to the my guess would be the CIA, because I just don't believe that this was happening without the CIA fully aware. And I don't know if y'all have read this book, Dark Alliance. Gary Webb lost his life over this book, and it talked about the CIA bringing crack, I believe it was, into the U.S. en masse. All right, so here's the story. Hernandez was a Honduran president. He dominated the country's politics for a decade. He was sentenced in New York to 45 years in prison on Wednesday. The article says for helping drug cartels ship hundreds of tons of cocaine into the U.S. in exchange for millions of dollars in bribes. But the conviction, the conviction was 1 count of conspiracy to import cocaine and 2 counts related to possessing a machine gun and destructive devices. So it doesn't say that he was convicted of bribery. It's not, that's what all the stuff that he was accused of. And to me, if he was being bribed by anybody, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the CIA. I mean, there's no chance in my mind they didn't know about this and that he wasn't working somehow with them. It's rare for a foreign head of state to be convicted in a New York courtroom. I believe that. So, and another thing is the 2 crimes were was it cocaine possession, conspiracy to import cocaine, and possessing a machine gun and other destructive devices. Those are both malaprohibita crimes, by the way. Those are not crimes against persons or property. Selling people drugs they want or having a defensive weapon, those are totally within liberties, our liberties. But here's where it starts to get interesting. He said at the hearing that he was innocent. He said, if it's not today or tomorrow, the truth will be known. He said that in Spanish. He said he alleged a political conspiracy against him by corrupt criminal witnesses and the government. Quote, it was as if I was thrown into a deep river with my hands bound. It was like the results were already known. He said the work he did with the U.S. to limit narcotics trafficking wasn't considered at trial. So he was working with the U.S. in the realm of narcotics trafficking, and that was not brought up at the trial. Sound familiar? That happens a lot. A lot of stuff is suppressed. The Ross Ulbricht case. But when he said that stuff about the witnesses and everything, it reminded me, I was rehearsing, I was pre-reading, let's say, the next installment of the Octopus book for, I don't know if y'all heard, like I read the instructions, the first few chapters of this book, The Octopus, Secret Government and the Death of Danny Casolaro. If you haven't heard it, just go to my feed, it's in there. And I'm poised to do the next section. And when I was reading it, so this is going to be the next installment, but I'm going to read it to you now just because it's so relevant. The actor here, this is a sworn affidavit by Michael Riconosciuto, who was the guy who adapted this. It's Promise software. It was some spyware, and the U.S. government wanted to take control of it over the private guy who created it. And he was suing. There was an investigation. Riconosciuto was the guy who actually worked on the thing for the U.S. government, and he was going to testify. So this is an affidavit that he wrote. He was swearing to. In February 1991, I had a telephone conversation with Peter Vdenix, then still employed by the U.S. Department of Justice. He attempted during this telephone conversation to persuade me not to cooperate with an independent investigation of the government's piracy of Inslaw's proprietary Promise software being conducted by the Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives. So this guy calls him and wants to persuade him not to testify. And this is what he says. Vdenix stated that I would be rewarded for a decision not to cooperate with the House Judiciary Committee investigation. He forecasted an immediate and favorable resolution of a protracted child custody dispute being prosecuted against my wife by her former husband if I were to decide not to cooperate. Videnics, and this is where it gets really relevant. Videnics also outlined specific punishments that I could expect to receive from the U.S. Department of Justice if I cooperated with the House. One punishment he outlined was the future inclusion of me and my father in a criminal prosecution of certain business associates in Orange County in connection with the operation of an SNL by way of underscoring his power and influence. He provided information that was not yet known to the public. He also threatened that if I cooperate, he would produce credible witnesses who would come forward to contradict any damaging claims I made, and I would subsequently be prosecuted for perjury. That also reminds me of the Franklin cover-up, the Boys Town thing. So we're seeing many cases of people testifying to the fact that this is how the government operates. So when this guy said that, I was like, I totally believe him. Okay. One more story before comments, and then I've got lots of little quick hits if we have time for that. There was an attempted coup in Bolivia this week, a couple of days ago. And I was like, I just realized there had been a coup in Bolivia like 5 years ago, and this is another one. The one 5 years ago, I did not realize like what was going on. So this guy, Evo Morales, he was president for 3 terms. He was going for to get reelected to a 4th term. His ability to stand for reelection was challenged in the courts. They said he couldn't run for another term, but it was totally adjudicated. Yes, it was okay. He ran, he was an indigenous person and a hardcore socialist, and he enjoyed great economic success, which the socialism takes credit for. Socialists attributed to socialism. It was probably the fact that they were exporting a lot of gas and gas prices were high, natural gas. So who knows why, but he was super popular because people were prospering. And he, perhaps in anticipation of, wanting to hedge his bets with gas, that kind of stuff's pretty volatile. He probably knew that their reserves were declining. And Bolivia apparently has 70%. I checked this twice, 70% of the lithium reserves in the world, but they have not yet tapped them. I don't know why. I'm not sure if it's harder to get to or what. But he was entering into an agreement, some arrangements to start extracting lithium, but not just extracting lithium. And lithium, as I'm sure you know, is absolutely critical to all the batteries that are running all the electric stuff that we're dealing with, from phones to cars. And he was not only going to extract the lithium, but he was also going to build a factory to make the batteries. Now, if he did that, he would probably corner the market on lithium batteries, and Bolivia would be rich, actually, instead of very poor. There was a really weird. So then his opposition lost the election, but they challenged the loss because if whatever, it's not important, but they challenged the loss. And he said, okay, fine. Like, I'm totally willing to submit to a recount. And the opposition would not submit. They wouldn't accept it. And riots started. And I would think it was the chief of police and police commander Yuri Calderon and armed forces commander William Kaliman suggested, quote, Morales step down to end the violence, which he did. Some chick, Janine Anez, a senator, stepped up as interim president with absolutely no credentials whatsoever. Totally big snaps from, was it Panetta? There was a U.S., whoever was head of, Pompeo. Yeah, Pompeo. That applauded her doing that. But the Center for Economic and Policy Research said there was absolutely, the allegations of fraud were in themselves fabricated. So I think that was a total coup. I think he won democratically. And I suspected, and I just found an article, a really thorough article, which I put in the show notes, that it was about the lithium, specifically the battery factory. And there was a crazy quote by Elon Musk. So I don't know if it was before or after the coup or what, all the lithium stuff went on hold. Like, there was too much pressure and they didn't do the lithium stuff. Now, Bolivia is experiencing an economic slump because gas prices have fallen off. COVID shut stuff down and they don't have any lithium revenue to replace that. This ARCE, how would you pronounce that? I don't know. Was the deputy economic minister, or the economic minister under Morales. And when Morales went into exile and this other senator just took the place as president, she could only stay there until the next election was due. And then this guy who was a Morales protege did win. And he has been president since then. And that chick now is in jail. So I don't know what's going on with that. I think because of what she did during that violent uprising. But this guy, Arce, would later declare that one of the central parties interested in Bolivia's lithium would be none other than American manufacturer Tesla, with its CEO, Elon Musk, even tweeting over Bolivia's situation, saying, quote, "We will coup whoever we want. Deal with it." Are you fucking kidding me? So he did that. That was weird. So then Morales came back, and right now, he is saying, I guess he and Arce are like, Arce that can't be right. Guy's name is not Arce, ARCE, whatever. He's ready to, so Morales is challenging him for leadership on the left. And they were supposed to go into the 2025 election. They were probably both going to run, but a military coup was attempted against Arce, and Morales has denounced that. He's like, this is not the way to satisfy this. I assume that this is another attempt to get control of Bolivia because of the lithium. So that coup attempt failed. The general, whatever, is in jail. But I suspect there will be another one, because that is how it happened in Haiti. There was a coup attempt. The guy found out about it, tried to protect himself, but he was murdered. And the coup attempt, there was another coup attempt. Of course, I always think stuff like that is us. There's a good article in RT about that too that I put in the show notes. So let me go to comments. Stella, very funny. Okay, Mr. Arce, let's get to the bottom of this. You're so clever, Stella. Stella's funny. It's nice to see you here from Australia. It's quite early for her. Stuart is harvesting cabbage and golden beets today. Oh my gosh. So I have to make some sauerkraut and beets, even my Kate Deering stuff, which I absolutely love. She loves root vegetables. I love beets. I love a good borscht. I'm probably going to make a nice borscht over the weekend. We'll get some marrow bones. Let's see. Crisis USA, is that how I'm going to pronounce this? Just saw you on Tinfoil Hat. I hope you liked it. Stella says Australia is the biggest lithium producer by weight, just FYI. Thank you so much for clarifying that, Stella. Bolivia, I believe, produces no lithium whatsoever. I think the status of Bolivia with regard to lithium is that they hold 70% of the world's reserves. But I do not know how accessible it is, because that will make a big difference, because it has not been exploited yet. But she goes on to say, I think China probably ends up with a lot of that. Absolutely, definitely. So actually, if we're really going all cold/hot war with China, maybe China will rescue Evo Morales from the next coup. It's quite possible. You heard it here first. So I have a few quick hits I wanted to get to, and then I want to leave you with a that's very funny. This Stella, you crack me up. Or as my son with Down syndrome would say, you make me crack. Okay, so here's just a few quick hits I thought were kind of funny. China is harvesting moon rocks. They are harvesting moon rocks from the dark side of the moon. So I feel like we have Neil Young in there. We have a little Pink Floyd, but I don't think we have reality. And when I went to look at the pictures of this operation, there were computer simulations. I'm thinking, well, if it actually happened, why are we watching? Why are the pictures simulations? So they forgot a camera again? That's what I always thought about when the astronauts landed on the moon. There's no pictures of what the stars look like from the moon, which of course would be actually potentially the most valuable thing. Is like, can you imagine having another viewpoint, perspective point? It could really, it's quite possible that it changes the way we look at the universe, especially back then. I don't know how far out our telescopes went, but to have like a, and they just didn't think to take a picture of the constellations or anything from the moon. Whatever. Oh, Kenya, I'll give you a little update on the uprising or the revolt, whatever, the protests in Kenya. The government did say that the IMF was going to have to wait for their incredibly regressive tax package until things died down. So they have withdrawn. They didn't say that. What they said was, okay, we won't pass this law right now. The law was to literally tax bread to pay the IMF back. That thing should not exist. It's a moral hazard. Oh, I have to pay lip service to this. The Wall Street Journal reporter is going on trial in Russia today. And if you get the Wall Street Journal, which please don't. I will read it for you. And if you want to buy me a Wall Street Journal to read for you and tell it to you in an unbiased and sometimes humorous way, you may buy me a newspaper and get this show in the podcast format, totally commercial free on iTunes if you become a premium subscriber for less than the cost of a single issue of the Wall Street Journal. That's really not why I was telling you about this. I'm telling you about this because it's like full page spreads all the time. This guy's 1 year in captivity. He was arrested in Russia for spying. He was a reporter, and for spying on like defense contractors or something, or for them. I assume that any reporter, teacher, doctor, priest, anyone, like priests have to report to their superiors on whatever the state of their congregation. So priests go to be, to serve Catholic communities, let's say Catholic priests, wherever. And then they usually take a vow of obedience. Maybe they all do. I don't know, but certainly some of them do. They have to report. They have to do what they're told. That doesn't mean that they're not getting information for, let's say, the Vatican or whoever the Vatican is in league with, and they get persecuted. Father Walter Sizak, my mother prayed for his sainthood. We've prayed to him. He is. My brother wrote a story, which if I find it, I'll put in the show notes, The Divine Breakdown, where he was basically ice trucking practically. And his fuel filter froze, and he prayed to Father Sizak and found a fuel filter in his belly box. Like, it was a miracle. And for that, Father Sizak should be a saint. But he was in the gulag for like 27 years, accused of spying, which of course he correctly denied. But my guess is he was reporting to his superiors. So I always assume everybody's a spy, whether they know it or not. And you should know that when you're going to a foreign country, that's a hostile territory. You better mind your P's and Q's. So I don't care about this. I figure they're all spies. But it was news. So I did not fully touch on the Crimean missile thing. I think I didn't register how serious it was over the weekend because I try not to read the news on the weekends. And of course, that's why they do these things on the weekends. But Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, if I recall his title correctly, I love him. He's such a statesman and he's such a badass or whatever. He's honest. And that's like more than I can say for any of our statesmen. He came out and it's like, Ukraine shot missiles onto Crimea, killing civilians. And he said there's no way that could have happened without U.S. guidance, like their U.S. missiles. And when you're going to start killing civilians, halfway across the world from yourself, we could do the same. And you better watch it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not cool. Don't do that. Don't provoke that, you know? But if that's what it takes to get it to stop, I mean, that really upset me. Anyway, by the way, I didn't mention this maybe last week or whatever. There's that Gaza doc, right? So so Israel was trying to give out bread and accidentally shot hundreds of people. Remember that? Hard to believe story. And then the US was like, gosh, geez, they can kill everybody, but they cannot figure out how to drop bread. Maybe they should hang glide some bread over. So we're going to build a $300 million dock to get bread in from the water side, and then they'll have bread. And I remember predicting there's no way that's going to work because this is all a big excuse for us to have boots on the ground inside there. Not just the mercenaries who are there already, but actual US troops, a big operation because we want to take it over. We want to, you know, make a little Disneyland or whatever. It's sick. I'm not laughing. I don't think it's funny. But so the doc doesn't work at all. Zero, doesn't work. Complete government incompetence. Total government incompetence. Oops. And you know, you can believe it because boy, government just never seems to do what it says it's going to do. And but I wanted to just add a little layer on that. I don't believe they spent $300 million on that. My guess is it's popsicle sticks and paper mache. Why spend a lot of money on just to sink it in the ocean? Why not just ferret it away for some, you know, the other black ops that they're doing? Because they need to get the money for the black ops somewhere. They can't get it from, you know, the official process because that's above board. Anyway, these are my little quick hits. And with that, I was looking to see if there's, yeah, this is weird. Yeah. So I think it's weird. I'm going to stop getting distracted by the comments because I would like to chit chat with the people, but just one little thing. I do think it's weird that there is a dark side of the moon, that like it's always facing us. I don't think there's any particular astrological reason for that. And that like the eclipse can be perfect. Like it really, it shouldn't be. And I think it can't be, but it is. Like, I'm not sure the math works with the explanation they have given us. So there is weird stuff going on with the moon. I don't get super weird. So I just think there's something we don't know or they're not telling us, but I'm not sure it's like hollow. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe the earth is hollow. I don't know. All right. So this I think is a pretty, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the debate. I'm not great at predicting how things are going to go. But my feeling, you know, if this were an emotional rendition of how the debate's going to go tonight, I would say this captures my expectations pretty accurately. I'm not going to stop and start. I'm just going to leave you with it. Until next time, thank you so much. This is Monica Perez. Thank you so much for showing up.
Shut it down. Wait a minute, Jeff. Let me shut you down for a second, Jeff. Just for 1 second. I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. You could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job. I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job. Well, you didn't. It's on the ballot in the court. I don't think so. In the court. Well, there's nothing happening there. Donald, would you don't know her now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question. Why would you answer that question? The question is, the radical left. Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list? Gentlemen, not by much. I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you, old buddy. Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every primary. All he knows how to do is Tuesday. You got very lucky. Here's the deal. I got very lucky, and you get very lucky tonight as well. Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir? No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has. You'd be surprised. You picked be surprised. The wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time. Listen, you give number better health care at a much lower price. Because by the way, he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to do that. Fixed it. He has never offered a plan. To an extent. He has never done a single thing. No, but probably does. Gentlemen, you realize that you're both speaking at the same time. And it's too. That's the president's. Go ahead, sir. Many of your Democrat governors said President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just say something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. He gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker. Mr. President? Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word. Oh, give me a break. Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've been